Welcome to the Spirituality What? Podcast, where we explore the mysteries, joys, and challenges of being spiritual beings navigating our unpredictable human experience we call life here on planet Earth. I'm your friendly guide, Rebecca, ready to jump into our adventure of the day. Hi everybody, it's Rebecca. It's Spirituality What? Wednesday, and we are dropping a new episode with my good friend Kanda. So Kanda and I originally spoke in the first drop of episodes in January about feminism and spirituality, which was cool and interesting. Had a cool vibe. Kanda is back this time to do another two-part episode about astrology and spirituality. Kanda has been seriously studying astrology for about a decade, and it was really interesting to talk to Kanda this time about how she actually got into astrology. What are some of the differences between traditional and modern astrology? We get into some of the nitty-gritty, but it gives you an idea of kind of where those two things come from. The planets and their relationship to astrology, but also as archetypes. We talk a little bit about something that's specific to traditional astrology called conditions. And the conditions are sect, exaltation, fall, and domicile. We talk about different houses of the traditional chart. And we really talk about a lot of fun stuff. It's really fun. It's a detailed but interesting conversation. And I'm excited for you all to join us today. So we're going to dig right in. All right, welcome back everybody to Spirituality What? I am here today again with my good friend Kanda, and we are this time going to dive into the realm of astrology. So Kanda, I think because everybody knows you a little bit, maybe this time you can talk a little bit about, in your introduction, kind of how you found astrology and what you brought you there, and then we'll get into kind of the overall topic.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I have always had a passing interest in astrology since I was probably, 14, 15 years old, like most young girls. I mostly found it useful to learn how to understand other people.
Okay.
Because other people confuse me. So astrology I found was helpful with that. Now, of course, when I was a teenager, I didn't really dive into it too much, had other priorities. But I've always found psychology also fascinating.
Okay.
So when I got a little older, in my 30s and stuff like that, I started digging more into astrology, and I realized there was a correlation between psychology and astrology. And that's what more or less opened the door for me and made it a passion. Because more than anything, I want to understand others. Mm-hmm. Because they confuse the shit out of me. So I want to understand other people. However, digging into astrology has opened up so many other doors for me. The mathematics alone, I love math. I'm a math person. So just the angles and the trig and everything that's related to it just fascinates me. And the more and more I dig into it, it's just such a beautiful system. It has sacred geometry and it has numerology and it just has everything in it, and it's beautiful. I mean, your husband even showed me a zodiac with different notes attached.
That's
to different
music notes. Yes.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
so I'm starting to look into that because I want to start looking into sacred geometry and how it's related to music, and now how it's related to astrology. Because they're all mathematical systems, so they're related. And I want to dig in as far as I can because math is the beautiful universal language.
Very cool. Awesome. So we asked you this last time, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you again. We all change and grow, and maybe this changes as well. On the podcast, we ask every interviewee the same question, which is, what does spirituality mean to you?
Wow. This is going to be a hard one because spirituality has changed so much for me in the past year or so. None of this is real. None of this. I saw it with my own eyes, my own inner eye. None of this is real. And I think spirituality helps us learn where we really come from, who we really are, instead of this grand stage that we're on. Because that's what it is. To me, it's a grand stage. We're all playing a part. People learn their roles, they play their roles. Sometimes they don't play their roles well, and that's okay. It's practice.
Awesome. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very interesting angle and topic, and we've definitely talked about that before. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So astrology for today. I remember last time when we did the other episode and we talked about the alignment and how it would be really fun to do this topic. So that's why we're back here today.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the time that you and I have connected over the last couple of months, you had indicated that there was a big shift. And if I recall correctly, like it was Pluto, something related to Pluto that was kind of changing the world, changing the game for the next couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a reasonable place for us to start.
Absolutely. Now, in the last discussion we had about astrology, you and I, the private discussion we had, I had a different view of Pluto than I do now. Because I've started to dig. At first I was doing modern astrology, where as in Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio, and it's, the planet that transformation, individual transformation. I still believe that to a degree. However, since I've been digging into traditional astrology, which is Hellenistic, Babylonian, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, even Renaissance astrology, I'm finding that Pluto does not have the same impact on our lives that the original 5 planets plus the 2 luminaries, which is the sun and the moon, have on our lives. Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, they are the outer planets. They were discovered in the context of modern astrology. And while I believe they have use, especially when it comes to generations, so we will touch on that, I don't think it has as much impact on a personal basis as much as modern astrologists emphasize on.
Okay.
Like, for instance, now, yes, if you're getting a major conjunction, like my husband Brian is about to, he has his sun in Aquarius at 3 degrees, I think 50 something minutes, and Pluto is going to hit that on a conjunction, so that is going to make a difference. And I've already seen what's happening. So yes, and I personally am going through a square with Neptune and my sun in the past year and a half, and it has been absolutely brutal. I have been going under a lot of delusion, a lot of illusion. There's been a lot of spiritual stuff in my life that's been blowing my head off. So there's good and bad.
Yeah.
But almost done. So
yeah. Okay. So let's go back really quick. Traditional versus modern.
Okay.
So maybe could you explain? Well, so we have the differences with the planets here, but maybe talk a little bit about kind of the planets, the roles that they play, and then are there any other differences between traditional and modern astrology?
Oh yeah, there's quite a few differences. I mean, there's enough that we can recognize both systems in each other, obviously, but there is definitely major differences. The first and foremost being the fact that we only use this 5 planets and 2 luminaries in traditional.
To the rest of the planets. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another major difference is we use whole sign system. Now, I've done that before because I always found that whole sign resonates with me, whereas modern astrologists will turn their nose up at whole sign and go, Placidus or Porphyry or, what have you.
What does whole sign mean?
Whole sign mean, okay, so what it is, it's an arrangement of the houses around the zodiac wheel. So whole sign is every sign gets 30 degrees.
Okay.
Whereas with Placidus, it's based on quadrants. So it's based on the ascendant, descendant, ICMC. And you're gonna have houses that have maybe 20 degrees in them, and you're gonna have houses that maybe have 60 degrees in them. I think it's useful for some things, but I don't find it useful for natal or psychological astrology. Okay. I also don't use it for horary, which we will get into.
Okay. So in the traditional and with whole sign, every sign, and that means astrological signs, so Cancer and Scorpio and all of that. So every sign has 30 degrees, so they're all the same size, basically.
Yep.
Okay. Now, what do the planets do?
The planets are
And the
archetypes.
luminaries, you said.
The planets and the luminaries, they're archetypes. So they are representations of Jungian archetypes within our own psychology.
Okay.
So, for instance, Mercury is the symbol of the function of our intellect, of language, of siblings, of short distance travel. It is the trickster. Mercury is the trickster. Mercury is the one that reveals the door to occult knowledge. It's very useful to think of these archetypes and associate them with the gods and goddesses that they were associated with. So when you think about Mercury, Mercury is Hermes. So Hermes is the messenger. Venus is Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, art, passion. Mars is the god of, war. And so on and so forth. Saturn is cold. Saturn is Kronos. So Saturn is cold. Saturn is disciplinary. Jupiter is Zeus. Zeus is beneficent, and he's expansive, and he wants to give. And then you have, the sun and the moon. Now the sun represents our soul self. I like to think of it as the spark that broke off from the source.
Okay.
And it's what we're here to learn. It's particular energy that we are here to learn.
And when you say sun, that's like our main, I'm doing air quotes here, that's like our main sign. So when we're like looking at Cosmo and we're saying, oh, I'm a Scorpio, that's the sun sign.
That's
right?
your sun sign,
Okay,
yes.
yeah. Your incarnation sign.
Yes, it's the energy you're here to learn.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas like your ascendant is what you present to the world. Now that's the same as modern astrology. There are very many similarities, but there's a lot of differences. It's much more symbolic, I find, in traditional astrology. So, like I said, when you think of the planets, you think of their lords. So the lord of Mars is Aries. So you think of, the god of war. And what's interesting is in modern astrology, for instance, like I take a look at your sun and I say your sun is in Scorpio, and then I look at what house it's in and what aspects it makes to other planets. However, in modern traditional astrology, it's a little different. We not just look at where the sun is or other planets, we're looking at the condition they're in.
Okay.
That is a huge difference between modern and traditional. Modern does not do conditions.
Okay. What are conditions?
So there's quite a few.
Okay.
I'll just touch on the basic
couple.
ones. First one is sect. So sect is you have day sect and night sect. So you have day charts and night charts.
Okay.
So I was born in the evening, 5:55. So or is it 5:57? I can never remember. My daughter was born 5:55 or 5:57, and I was born the other, and I get us mixed up all the time. So it was one or the other. So I have a day chart. Now it's very far in the evening, but it's a day chart. You have a night chart.
Yeah.
Because you were born 11:11 p.m.
Yes.
And so when I look at your chart, I can see that your chart is on your sun is on the bottom of the chart, whereas your moon is on the
because it was night.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Now with me, sometimes it depends because it depends. Like your moon can be,
Yeah.
However, for me, I was born in the day, and my moon is like right behind me because I was born almost on a new moon. So it's very close. Now my moon is actually not. It's in okay condition because it's in its domicile. So when your sign or when your planet is in its domicile, that is a huge it's a good condition. You want it's a very, very good condition.
Okay, so what does that? I mean, it's home, right? What does that mean? Being in its
so
home?
for instance, the home. Okay, like Mars is at home in Scorpio and Aries. Okay. So if you have a Mars in Scorpio or Aries, now I'm very much simplifying things.
Yes.
That is a very good condition. My Mercury is in Gemini, which is its domicile, so it's in very good condition. You're such a little stinker.
The dog is like, couldn't be closer to the two of us here right now.
Let's crawl up my butt.
Okay,
look at him,
he literally is crawling on Kanda at the moment, but it's a live podcast.
I know, right? So it's sects. What it is, so you have day, Appa.
Appa, get down.
You have basically you have diurnal planets and you have nocturnal.
Okay.
So the diurnal sect is going to be the sun, obviously, is the leader of the diurnal sect, and then Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury is always the wild card.
Okay.
And then for nocturnal sects, you have the leader is the moon, and you have Venus and surprisingly Mars.
Okay.
And then once again, Mercury is the wild card. Now, for you, your moon is very happy because your moon is in the upper part of a night chart. So it's very happy where it is right now. So your moon is happy in its sect. My sun is very happy in its sect because it is in a now, yes, and your moon is in a feminine sign. That also makes a difference. My sun is in a masculine sign, Gemini.
Okay.
And it's in a day chart. So it's really, really happy. My Saturn is also there. Well, not in Gemini. My Saturn's in Leo. But it's also very happy because all my sect is in the day. So it's very happy. Now, I have other things that make my chart kind of painful.
Okay.
But that's pretty happy. So that's sect.
Sect. Okay.
And then another really important thing is, we already touched on it, is what domicile, if it's in domicile or not.
Yes. Okay.
And then there's exaltation and fall. Now, modern astrologists will talk about detriment, which is the opposite of domicile.
Okay.
So, for instance, here's a good example. Mercury is in domicile in Gemini and Virgo. It is modern astrologists will say it's in detriment in Sagittarius and Pisces. Okay. I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
And neither do traditional. I don't think detriment is a thing. Detriment, like, I've never met somebody with a Sagittarius Mercury who was not, like, using their Mercury to, a good extent. Like, utilizing their Mercury well. I agree with the traditional.
So the modern one, the detriment, like, it's not well placed. It's not good in that location. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So one way to think about it is, when a planet is in its domicile, it's home, it's happy, it's comfortable, it knows where everything is, it's home. And modern astrologists like to say that when a sign or when a planet's in detriment, it's in the house of an enemy. I don't see that.
I see. And so you might see more conflict or dissonance or just struggle maybe, but that's not from your perspective what you actually see there. Okay.
I'm actually agreeing more with, because from my observations, I agree more with the traditional astrologers. Opposites are not always bad. Sometimes they're really good. Sure. Opposites attract. Yeah. And conjunctions, modern astrologists love conjunctions. Conjunctions are not always good. Sometimes it's too much of energy. Mm-hmm. And it overpowers.
Okay, so we've got sect, domicile. What is this exaltation?
Exaltation is, it's kind of like domicile, but it's essentially, think of it this way. The moon is exalted in Taurus. That means when the moon goes to Taurus's house, it is the honored guest. It is everything. All of its needs are catered for. So exaltation is a really, really good placement. Now, the opposite of exaltation being the fall, I have seen plenty of examples of. Fall.
Okay.
The fall is basically the opposite of exaltation. Okay. So that I like to think of as you're in the house of an enemy.
Okay. All right. So, what is a house? We've used that a couple of times already. So, what is a house?
That's a very interesting question. So, the house system is essentially, your planets are who, your sign is what, and your house is where.
Okay.
So, what aspect of life is this energy going to be showing up in?
Okay.
So, the first house is the house of the ascendant. That is you. That is your body. That is your life. I have read that traditional astrologers could take a look at somebody's ascendant, like the house ascendant, and they could give them a very good overview of what their life is going to be. Now, I am nowhere near that level of skill, but maybe someday.
Okay.
Now, the second house is the house of possession. What you have, what you value, what you want, and these are somewhat in line with modern
houses
definitions, but there are some differences.
Okay.
Now, the third house is the house of communication, learning. For instance, here's a good example. Traditional astrology says third house is the house of occult.
Yes.
Occult, like
yes,
learning occult.
yep.
Not necessarily being in the occult, but learning occult. It's the door.
Okay.
Whereas modern does not give the third house that particular distinction.
Okay.
The other thing between modern and traditional is that traditional does not assign particular signs to houses. In modern, like Aries is the first house. Like the natural zodiac, Aries is the first, Taurus is second. Modern or traditional doesn't do that. Like that's not a thing.
At all.
Yeah, at all. And I actually agree with that.
Okay.
I think that makes more sense.
Why?
There are certain things about, like, for instance, Aries. Aries is, all about energy and action. Sometimes it's impatient and impulsive.
Okay.
That's not the first house. The first house is you, who you are.
Yeah, right. You just said, the ascendant is the first house.
Yeah. So there's other examples too, but that is like
So there's not always a correlation or a relationship from your perspective. So that making that assignment just doesn't seem natural.
Exactly. It did, and it makes more sense the way the traditional astrologists looked at it. Because then you got fourth house, the house of home; fifth house, the house of entertainment; sixth house, the house of physical health or slavery, which was, I learned that. I was like, oh, dear Jesus.
Wow.
Seventh house, partnerships, marriage; eighth house, death, other people's property. Ninth house is generally religion. Ninth house is religion, long distance travel. It's also the occult. Now, eighth and ninth are very much connected to the occult. The eighth is basically the initiation into the occult, and the ninth is occult knowledge.
Okay.
10th is the house of work. It is the house of occupation. It is the house of leadership. 11th is the house of friends, the house of friendship. Now, I do want to make the distinction that the 7th house is the house of, like, close friends, whereas the 11th house is the house of, like, acquaintance.
Intimate versus acquaintance. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then 12th house is a doozy, because the 12th house is, we use it for the time period before birth, if that makes sense. It is the tying up of a cycle. It is often very difficult. It can indicate isolation, spiritual awakening, which can often be painful, prison, mental illness, debilitating disease. It's not always, it can be a very unpleasant house.
Okay.
And that's one thing that I very much like about the difference too, is that modern astrology is very, very happy. Everything is good. It's like, no. Sometimes things suck.
I was like, wait a minute. Who's living that life?
Right?
I'm like, where are those humans? Because I don't think that's how it works.
No. Whereas traditional is more realistic. Like, no. Sometimes things are not going to be good. Sometimes they're going to just fucking suck.
Yeah.
Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
It's how you deal with it.
Get through it. Learn from it. Grow from it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we have signs. We have planets, we have conditions, and we have houses. So how do these play together when you're looking at a chart?
It's like reading a language. It's like looking at a map. It's a whole new language. You're interpreting symbols. You're, interpreting archetypes. So let me look at my chart real quick.
Okay, so I was like, so if we imagine here, like, a planet is in a house and a sign is in a house, or how does that, like... What are the relations? How do those work again? I know you just said that, but I already... It's complicated, right? It is complicated.
Oh, I've got your chart pulled up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because I was looking at your north and south node, north and south node is very spiritual, and I definitely want to touch on that.
Interesting, okay.
So here's a good example. So I'm going to look at your moon, which is the function of receiving.
Yes.
The sun builds, or the sun gives, and the moon receives.
Okay.
So your moon, is in Pisces. And so what I want to do is take a look at Pisces. Like, Pisces is in your chart. Now, Pisces in your chart is 12th house.
Okay.
Oh, not Pisces, I'm sorry. Pisces in your chart is 8th house, my bad, which is... Good luck.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back to my notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that was death, you said.
And other people's property.
Other people's property. Yeah. Okay, occult, you said too.
Occult death, sex, other people's property.
Okay.
I have 4 planets in the 8th house. It's, 3 planets and an asteroid. It's
Okay, so the house is there, and your planets and your signs move through the houses.
Yes.
Or your planets move through the houses. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So now your moon is in Pisces in the 8th house. Now, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in traditional astrology.
Okay.
Jupiter, so what I want to do is take a look at where Jupiter is in your chart. And it appears to me that Jupiter is in Aquarius. Now, here's the thing. You want them to see each other.
Okay.
If it was domicile, it would be different. It wouldn't matter. But because the moon is not domicile in Pisces. Now, it's not uncomfortable in Pisces. It's a water sign. The moon's happy in most, except not Scorpio. The moon is very unhappy in Scorpio. It's actually in its fall in Scorpio.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it's very unhappy in Scorpio. But the moon it's not bad in Pisces.
Okay.
But to make it better, it would be better if it could see, and by see I mean have an aspect to Jupiter. It doesn't, unfortunately. However, your moon is still in really good shape. Yeah. It's a night chart. It's in a water sign, a feminine water sign. I would have to do the bounds and all that. And now those are
of other things.
Bunch of other things to check the condition. But it looks like your moon's in pretty good shape. It's not the greatest, but it's not just much worse. Okay,
so how do we interpret now that we know that the moon is in Pisces? Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. And it is a night chart. What does that mean? How do we interpret that?
So first thing, like I said, we're going to take a look at the condition of the moon, and we've already decided your moon is in pretty good condition. It's I would give it a B+.
Okay.
So what we want to do, so if your planet is in good condition, it's easier for it to express its positive qualities.
Oh, okay.
So the moon is, caretaking, nurturing, creativity, imagination. You have all that. You're doing pretty good there. Now, that it's in Pisces, because Pisces is the sign of unification. Like, Pisces wants to bring everything together.
All right, that is it for today. That is just the beginning of our awesome conversation. Please join me next week for part 2 with Kanda on astrology and how we can use astrology as spiritual beings in this human incarnation. See you next time. Thank you for joining me on today's Spirituality What? Adventure. Subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. Visit us on Instagram at spirituality.what to interact, tell us what spirituality means to you, and even provide some of your own personal musings. Human on, you phenomenal spiritual beings.